Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the weekly meeting. Al and Ruben, hope you guys are having a great day. Big group of us today. I'll give it a couple more minutes for people to join in. Any questions while we wait for the rest of the crowd to shuffle in? Nothing, Al or Ruben? Cool. Hey, Sydney. Hey, Nate.
Hey, what's up?
Just waiting a few seconds for other people to shuffle in. Any questions while we wait? Anything in general?
Hey, Zorka, quick question for you. Have you ever used Curbio or a similar type service?
No, what is that? I've heard that name before.
Yeah, so it was something I came across in some of the Skillbridge curriculum where
Hmm.
it was in a video, a lady came on there from Curbio talking, and it was kind of like a company that would come in and do some upgrades to the house that you're trying to sell as a real estate agent, and they, their ticket to success is they don't get paid until the house sells, so it's nothing out of pocket at time, at the time the work's being done for the owner of the home.
Yeah. So I have heard about that. There's a few different companies that do that. I think EXP was in the process of getting one, or they might have implemented it, but turned out not to be that effective. And
Okay.
it would actually be a good question for the Gwilts, because I believe they did do that. Tasha and David did that with one of their listings.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
but yeah, for overall, from what I've heard from other people, um, it's not going as well, and especially since
Yeah.
I think I first heard about it like probably 2 years ago, and I think it's probably just makes it really challenging because the seller has to be like flexible with the contractors and getting the work done, because as time goes on and the company that's facilitating that renovation and all that work, if you have a seller that's being a little bit challenging with allowing all the work to get done, or like opinion of value at the end of it, all that stuff.
Yeah, I could
Probably
see
gets
that.
complicated. Yeah, but it's a great idea though, because I walk around the neighborhood here in Hawaii, and you see a lot of houses that could benefit from some upgrades, and a lot of them you can kind of tell by like the lack of care for the home, that the people
Right.
that are living there are probably like elderly, just don't really have the energy or the funds to do the renovations, and so it'd be a great idea to like, hey, I'll renovate your house. We can work out some kind of agreement where I'll sell your house 10 years from now or something. Like once you want to move into like a shared home or whatever. But yeah,
Cool. Thanks.
all right. So today we'll be talking about um, tradespeople that you want to develop relationship as you're getting started in the real estate business. Let me share my screen. Can everybody see that? I'm actually gonna do the full screen share because then you can't see my pointer. Um, all right, there we go. And it's not an all-inclusive list, but it's the people that you'll be working with the most frequently as you navigate a real estate transaction. This is primarily from the buy side perspective. Um, and so these are professionals that you can be making relationships right now. Even before you're licensed, you can start making friends with, you can look up a home inspector, because you don't have to be licensed to shadow a home inspector or to shadow a lender, shadow a photographer, any of the things that we're going to talk about today. And so you can make those relationships either through shadowing them, like, hey, kind of random, but I'm becoming a realtor and I just want to see what exactly you do, and so I can explain it, why your role is important to my buyer, and like what they can expect from you and all that stuff. You can do that, or you can also invite them for coffee. Like, who doesn't want a free coffee? And if they don't, then that kind of shows you the kind of person they are. Maybe they're not super helpful or super friendly, or they might be super busy, but you can always coordinate something with them if they're the kind of person you're going to want to work with in the future. Which two big things you want to look for, and really all of these trades, is that the person is a problem solver, so they can think on their own. It's not just like they run into a problem and it's like, game over. We can't do X, Y, or Z. No way around it. You want somebody that will be like, hey, yeah, we have this issue. Um, here's one way we can do it. It's going to be kind of costly and it'll get the job done really fast. Or we can do it this other way. It's going to be a little longer, but it'll save you some money. And if you have the time to do it, that's probably the better way to do it. And so you want somebody that can think that way and not just hand you a problem. I'm sure you've heard it during your time in the military. You want somebody that'll hand you a solution or options to choose from instead of just, hey, this thing's broken. I don't know how to fix it. And then it just adds on to your workload. So yeah, being a problem solver, and the other one, big one, is being responsive or having good communication skills. Because what's the point of having the top lender in the country in your pocket if they don't answer their phone? Like, awesome that they can close any deal, but you can't ever reach them, then kind of a problem. Same thing with home inspectors and all that other stuff we're going to talk about. All right, so I kind of sequenced these trades in the order that you will most likely interact with them during a transaction, again, from the buy side perspective. So the first one will be mortgage broker or lender. So you definitely don't want to come across a client and you start educating them on the buying process. You start shopping around with them. You're going to get your buyer's representation agreement signed. You show them 40 different homes all across the county, and then they finally find a house that they like, and you realize you need to submit a pre-approval letter with the offer to the seller's agent to make an offer. And then they go to get pre-approved, and turns out they don't qualify for hardly anything. So that all that time you spent was wasted, and you're kind of back to square one. So if you have a solid mortgage broker, typically what I do, we usually within the same day that I come in contact with a client, a new lead, new prospect, establish that conversation, establish that I'm going to be helping them out with the buying process. I'll introduce them to a lender, and it's good to have more than one lender, and really all of these, it's good to have more than one that you're familiar with. You know their strengths, you know how they communicate, when they communicate, all that stuff. And that really just comes with time from working with them, but definitely beneficial to get to know some when you're just getting started. But yeah, so I connect them with lender, and now that I have several lenders that I've worked with before, based off of my Zoom meeting with somebody that's might be inbound, or my in-person meeting with somebody, I kind of get a feel for their personality. And like if they're really easygoing, like to joke around, sense of humor, that type of thing, then there's a couple lenders that I would connect them with. Or if they're very just business numbers, all they care about is just getting the job done, then there's other folks that are lenders that are that way that I'll connect them with. So that's the first professional to be in touch with. And the way the problem solving and communication comes into play is problem solving is, if the buyer has some kind of weird situation with their finances, like maybe they transfer money back and forth between a bunch of different accounts, or they have a rental property that they have or have not been reporting on their taxes, or so anything that's weird like that, the lender will have a solution of how to resolve that, to make it so that they can still properly afford the property that they're applying for or offering on. And then yeah, responsiveness, especially when it comes down to the timelines throughout the transaction, having conditional loan approval and final loan approval, getting those documents to the south side in a timely manner, or at least before the deadline, so that you don't put your buyer in jeopardy of losing out on that property. I don't know how other states are, but in Hawaii, the transaction, like all the contents of the contract, are kind of shaped to favor the buyer. And so the seller, what I mean by that is that the seller doesn't really have any opportunities to back out of the transaction, unless the buyer kind of gives them an opportunity. So for the due diligence period, if the buyer doesn't see anything wrong with the property, during the home inspection, then it'll continue right past that, no problem. The seller won't have the opportunity to cancel for any reason. Also, if there are a bunch of items found and the buyer is asking for a ton of credits, then the seller has the option to say no at that point and walk away if the buyer doesn't. But it's really the buyer walking away, because if the buyer hears, oh, seller doesn't want to give us credit. Sorry, my dog's chewing on. Hope you guys can't hear that plastic noise in the background. Um, but yeah, so if the buyer asking a bunch of credits, seller says no, then it really comes down to just the buyer deciding, oh, the seller said no, do I continue or do I not? But it's not a situation where, oh, this buyer is being greedy, they're asking for a ridiculous amount of money for these repairs, I don't want to work with them anymore. That's not how it works. It would have to be the buyer canceling on that. So yeah, back to your mortgage broker. So having a mortgage broker that's going to be responsive throughout all that, because this conditional loan approval, that's a benchmark in your timeline for the transaction. So if you don't provide that conditional loan approval form to the sell side, then that gives them an opportunity to cancel. Same thing with final loan approval. And then also when it comes down to the very last days of the transaction, you want to have somebody that's responsive so that they're coordinating with the title officer and making everything go smoothly. Yeah, I'll put mortgage broker first, not only because they're the one of the first people you should come into contact with when you're helping a buyer, but also because it's probably it's like your Robin to your Batman. Transaction manager. So this is kind of an optional professional to incorporate, but I'd highly recommend doing it, especially when you're just getting started. So when you're a brand new agent and you're going through your first transaction, you have no idea what's going on. Like you may have done a bunch of online training, but there's a big difference between doing online training and actually doing it. And so it's good to have a transaction manager who goes through the process of sending out the timeline, sending out different emails at different points. And all it really comes down to is you provide them with your fully executed purchase agreement, and then they start asking you for items that they need, and then delivering them to the appropriate parties. And typically a transaction manager will cost like $500 to $700 per transaction. Depending on how your team is set up, you might have a team transaction manager. So maybe the fee is different, but it's definitely a person to get in touch with and get familiar with. My wife is technically our transaction manager. She's a licensed realtor, so she's able to do a lot more stuff. So once we get a property under contract, she kind of takes it to the finish line. Any other in-person interactions, I'm there for like the home inspection and other stuff like that, but that makes a big difference, so that you can continuously add new clients to your pipeline. Otherwise, if you go from driving around all day, every day, showing properties, and then you get under contract and now you're sitting behind the screen all day watching for emails, then you're going to get to the end of that transaction, like, oh crap, yes, I just closed this deal, but now I got to get back out there and start doing more showings. But if you have somebody that's doing most of the computer work for you, then you can be out there. You get one buyer under contract, and boom, you're right out there the next day, doing more showings, getting another buyer under contract. Escrow title officer. So this might be different depending on the state you're in. I know in North Carolina, they do, like, attorneys will handle your escrow. But over here, there's lots of title companies that so they're kind of like third party middleman. They hold the funds, and they're also sending back and forth a lot of documents to transfer the ownership of the property. Again, someone that's responsive and a problem solver. We had this transaction where the previous owner, so the person that was selling it, bought it from somebody who was being sued by the HOA for not paying the amount of money they're supposed to pay after they foreclosed on their home. And so the seller had nothing to do with that aside from buying that property from the person who owed that money. And so that defect was on the title, that there was somebody else was being sued for that. And so the odds of that impacting the second buyer, so owner bought it from the person, had nothing to do with it, now somebody else is buying it. So the odds of that person being impacted by that, very slim. And so in that situation, the title company that we're working with, they're like, hey, you can buy title insurance or like an improved program or whatever, elevated coverage, and that'll cover you from any issues with that. Instead of just like, oh, no, legal issue, can't do it, cancel escrow. They provide solutions for how to make it possible. And then it just comes down to, does the buyer want to or not want to go that route? And then some other things that the title officer or escrow officer can do for you is they can pull information on people that have bought within the past 6 months, 5 years, whatever it is, whatever time frame. They can pull the addresses, names, a few other items that they can pull from public record for you. Send you an Excel spreadsheet. So if you want to break out your pen and paper, you can do some handwritten letters to people, or you can upload it to some kind of mailing software where you can just mail blast marketing materials to like a surrounding neighborhood for a listing you have, whatever the case might be. But again, problem solver and being responsive. A home inspector. So you want a home inspector that's going to find absolutely everything they can on the property. So all these professionals that you're working with and connecting your clients with, keep in mind that they're a reflection of you. And so if they're, top performers, do an awesome job, make the whole experience really smooth, then your client is also going to see you that way. But if there's issues, right out the gate with the lender not ever answering their phone, or the escrow officer not sending out instructions on how to wire the earnest money deposit, stuff like that, then it's all going to be a reflection on you. And even if you're working around the clock as efficiently, effectively as possible, your client's going to be like, what the heck? Why is everything just been a problem this entire time? I don't know if I want to close on this property. It's giving me a bad feeling in my stomach. But if everything's going smooth, everyone's professional, operating at the best of their ability, then the opposite. They'll be like, oh, this is the best experience I ever had. I'm going to refer you to all my friends. So with home inspector, you want to have somebody that is going to do a really good job finding every issue they possibly can, and also communicating the issues that they find to the buyer, so that it doesn't seem like every little thing is a deal breaker, red flag. So like if there's an outlet that's doesn't have the ground fault circuit interrupter in GFCI, and they're like, oh man, this outlet is supposed to be GFCI, it's not. This is really bad. Then the buyer, who may have little to no idea what a GFCI circuit outlet is, might see that as a deal breaker and be like, oh crap, we need to cancel escrow. In reality, it's like a $50 fix, even by a licensed electrician, which you should have all your work done by. And so you need to have a home inspector that will communicate, that is experienced with various types of issues that homes have, and is able to communicate, how severe of a issue that is. So it's, on the other hand, if it's like a crack in the foundation, and you have a home inspector that's completely clueless and has never worked on a home at all, just read books about what to point out on a home inspection, they might go through the home inspection. Oh yeah, this foundation, the slab is completely cracked in half. But yeah, nothing to worry about. So let's just continue the inspection. And if they brush right over it, and maybe it's something that's not as obvious, because you as the realtor, and you're present for that home inspection, you hear that, it's like, whoa, can we come back to this? This is definitely a red flag. But if it's something that's less obvious, like when I was first getting started, there's this old electrical system. It's called knob and key, and so it's like wires that are like running through the attic with like these little pieces of plastic or something. And when I first heard that, I was like, okay, it's just a different type of electrical system. But the home inspector who was experienced and everything was like, oh, this is actually a fire hazard because it's like exposed wires just out in the open. I was like, oh crap. Thank you for letting me know that, because I had no idea what that was. Um, and so yeah, having a knowledgeable, um, even keeled, but somebody that's able to adequately explain all the things that they're finding. Definitely want them to find as much as possible, because so I had a home inspector compliment me one time. He's like, I enjoy working with you because like you want me to do my job and like find everything. I've interacted with realtors before who like show up before the client gets there and they ask him, what did he find? And like, oh yeah, don't tell them about that thing you found, because yeah, it's not that big of a deal, and they're worried they're gonna cancel if there's like anything wrong with this house, which is pretty wrong. I feel like that's pretty unethical thing to do. Um, and so definitely want somebody that's going to find absolutely everything they can, so that you can communicate that to the buyer so they know what they're getting into. And then another thing is, I kind of see the inspection report as like a coupon book, because anything that's, you know, more than like $50, that's something that's worth asking for a credit for, I 100% will ask for, because that will benefit my client, the buyer. And because it's your fiduciary duty to look out for them. So if there's an electrical panel that's outdated, that has a history of fire hazard, whatever, if there's some minor cracks along the like the edge of the foundation where it's like just from spalling, kind of routine stuff that needs to be repaired just to prevent further damage, that kind of stuff, like all those things, I'll get an idea of how much it would cost to get those things repaired, and then I'll put together credit request or repair request asking for the seller to repair those items. But that wouldn't be possible without a solid home inspector that finds everything they can. Um, termite inspector, termite inspections may or may not be required in your state. They are required here, especially for the VA loan. And yeah, you want somebody that, again, is problem solver and is responsive, because you might have a transaction that you need to close really quickly, or maybe something changes in the timeline and you need your termite inspector to adjust their schedule to make it work. And so you want somebody that'll pick up their phone and if you're in a crunch, they'll make things happen for you. And then also the problem solving piece comes in. So an example, we had a transaction a while ago where um, he found powder post beetles in a shelf in the house, and I was like, I don't even know what that is, and can you just treat it? He's like, oh well, there's really no um spot treatment. There's no like spray or anything to kill these things. You actually just have to freeze the piece of wood or throw it away. And I was like, oh crap. All right, so we'll freeze it. And he's like, yeah, here's the company information for this local freezer company that freezes like food and a bunch of other random things, equipment, whatever. And you can just go over there, tell them I sent you. They'll freeze the thing for you and get it done. And so that's what we did. And so, but he could have just been like, oh yeah, it's a problem. I have no idea how to fix it. Spray doesn't work, so good luck. Home insurance agent. So as your buyers, this kind of falls more on the lender, but it does help to have some of your own, because depending on how your communication is with your client and client with the lender, they might feel more comfortable talking to you about your recommendations on everything, or or maybe they'll just get it from the lender. But it does help to know some insurance agents that you can recommend to your clients, that'll give them good pricing, explain to them why they need home insurance, all that stuff. And then lastly, contractors, and there's a wide variety of licensed contractors that you can get to know, and you will get to know along the way. I would say the folks I deal with the most are probably electricians. Um, we tend to have a lot of electrical panels out here in Hawaii that are made by companies that are no longer in business, or that on whatever report or magazine that they have, they say that brand is known for fire hazards. So A lot of times I'll reach out to our licensed electrician and ask him for a quote on the replacement of that electrical panel or whatever the work is needed. And then once the transaction is done, the electrician will go out and get that work done. But so with a recent one, we did it during escrow. And so it's definitely nice to have somebody they can work with that's going to charge you a reasonable amount and can make things happen on short notice. Yeah, one of our current escrows, we had to get our licensed electrician out there to just replace the circuit breaker. The uh, the folks were saying it was going to be a really costly repair that was needed. Turned out to just be a circuit breaker that needed to be swapped out. So it saved us a good chunk of change there. But yeah, all these other and there might be other types in your area depending on the part of the country that you live in. Maybe they like in North Carolina, stuff with flooding is a bigger deal if you're like right along the coast or if you're in the mountains or something. Maybe there's some kind of cabin construction expert that you need to deal with. Here we don't have heaters, so I think our HVAC specialists are probably a little bit rusty with um, heating components, but other parts of the country, there's probably experts that are really good on insulation and the heater and all that stuff, which is more or less non-existent here. And that's about it. Any questions, anything I talked about? These are just a few other slides that were generated by good old gamma.app. Presentation generator. And so another cool thing is like, as you network with all these professionals, maybe they take a liking to you, you guys develop a good business relationship, and maybe you get a client, they'll send you some people your way, maybe you'll help them, maybe you'll educate them on um, the home buying process, maybe if nobody's ever bothered to talk to them about it, which is kind of mind-blowing. You think like, oh, these home inspectors and these electricians or the various people that you work with, you think like, oh, they deal with realtors on a daily basis. Like there's not a chance that they haven't already heard a spiel about buying or selling. And you talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, I was actually thinking about buying a house, but I don't know what it's like to do that. All right, let's meet up. Sit down for some coffee. Sydney.
If you have family members that are in these fields and you recommend them, is that something that's frowned upon or something that you should write in a disclosure with agreement from both seller and buyer? How does that work?
Um, I've never dealt with that before, but so in a real estate transaction, if you are representing somebody that is your family, you do have to disclose that connection. As far as doing repairs, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to if I was getting like a roof replaced on a property we're selling because the buyer asked for it, but I'm representing the seller, and the roof company is my family. I might disclose just to like cover my butt. I might be like, hey, um, I see you got a quote and it's like $80,000. My family said he's a licensed roofer, contractor. He'll replace the roof for 20K. Are you okay with that? I would just disclose it that way. And if they're like, oh yeah, we want it in writing, then I don't see a reason why not to, because licensed contractors are supposed to be bonded, insured, all that stuff. And so, yeah, it wouldn't hurt to communicate it to the other side just to cover your butt.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't necessarily think it's mandatory to put in writing. Anything else, Justin?
I always got random questions for you, Zor.
Send it.
How do you like who holds the information regarding like septic systems and wells? So like, for example, if you have like a 3-bedroom house that's converted to a 5, uh, like, is that information, like what was installed, anywhere to be found?
You mean as far as like the bucket that's underground, like how what it's designed to hold?
Yeah.
Um, you'd probably have to look in your like public tax record, which would or the here it's called DPP, Department of Permits and Planning,
Yeah.
and so they should have some sort of. Let me see.
DPP.
You're in Missouri?
Correct. Yeah.
So there's probably some equivalent of DPP there. And so like on here, I can pull up an address. Let's see. I don't know what this defaulted to. Oh, this is one of our listings over in Ola. And so same details, parcel, facilities, building sign and permits. So you can go to the permit section. And so this is the we can see from online for Hawaii, but if you go down
Mm-hmm.
physically to the office, they actually do have a pretty impressive amount of records with all the drawings, because if that well or the septic system was installed properly and like to code and filed through the city and all that stuff, they'll have a record there. They'll have like the old drawings from like 100 years ago of what they did and the materials they used, all that stuff, who did the work. So like these permits are in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's okay? That's for the city and county of Honolulu. Okay. I'll look for that for Missouri. Yeah, because I did some basic Google searching stuff and it talks about planning for a septic tank, but nothing that talks about like records of what has been installed.
Hmm. Yeah, and there might be like a if you contact like your local waste um organization. So here is Board of Water Supply does water, and then they also kind of deal with the wastewater as well. And so whatever the local waste company is called there, um, they might be able to, if they don't have the answer themselves, they might be able to direct you to some kind of database or somebody to talk to that could give you information on that. But
Copy.
yeah, I guess worst case you could just have like if you have a specific property in mind, you could have somebody come out and evaluate it, take a look at it with the camera and everything, maybe jump down in there.
Yeah, yeah. I know they just had a serviced. So yeah, I just got a listing where it was a 3.2. They converted it to a 5.2. So unfortunately, I'm anticipating that the septic probably wasn't redone. But that's just an assumption based on my part.
Hmm.
And I'm just kind of wondering how this is going to trickle, but I don't want to, start advertising and not be able to have that in my back pocket as far as like knowing what they have.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. I mean, you um, could ask the sellers how often they've had to have it pumped. And so
yeah,
if it's gone from um, 3 times a year to like 6 times a year, then it's probably indicative of like how, and that's it's ultimately it's what the new owners will care about, like how often you have to have it pumped and how much does it cost. Um, but yeah, if you definitely want to know, if you want to know like exactly the parameters of that system under there, yeah, might need to get somebody physically inside there to check it out.
yeah. Yeah, we'll probably end up doing that. And then just kind of lesson learned from my standpoint. So I'd never heard of this, but in Taney County, Missouri, there's a free septic service once every 24 months.
Wow,
So
nice.
whoever sold the house to these people did not tell them, so they paid to have it cleaned out. So just like do some research in your area and see if there's any of those services because I'd never heard of it. And when I bought this house, my friend just happened to tell me about it. He's like, "Oh yeah, dude, every 2 years they'll come out and clean out for free." I was like, "Well, that's pretty fantastic." So
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah,
Um, Here on Oahu, our dump is free for the most part. You can do like a 1 truckload dump, but like some people might think that junk removal is like you have to pay for that regardless. But yeah, I'm sure there's lots of other unique services like that might be free that you can help out your buyers and sellers with.
for sure. Sweet. Thanks,
Yes.
Dora.
Thanks, Justin. All right, that's it for today. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes if there's any last questions. Otherwise, have a wonderful week.
Thanks, Zor. Appreciate you.
See ya.